So there's been an article making its way around the internet entitled The Elder Scrolls 6: Bethesda Expects Dissatisfied Players. Well, that's the translation anyway. It was originally written in German, and I've put the article in the description, but assuming that the translation is correct, there's a few key things that we can take away. It says, after there were already upsets among the fans at the release of Starfield, Bethesda firmly expects the fans to grumble here as well. According to Bruce Nesmith, the lead designer, it's nearly impossible to meet the expectations of the fans. He also sees Bethesda here a little in a trap that Valve has also been in. The studio had a good run for 20 years with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and preserving that run is not easy. Only a few studios like Rockstar Games can do this, while Valve don't even try. The fans who want to buy the Elder Scrolls 6 will hardly be able to meet their expectations, Nesmith said. And the marketing departments are putting their heads in their hands and crying over it, because it's like, okay, if it's not perfect, if it doesn't get a 95 plus on Metacritic, we're a failure. Nesmith, who was involved in Daggerfall, Oblivion, Fallout, went on to say, The Elder Scrolls 6 will undoubtedly be a great game, but it will be compared to the previous games from Bethesda. Weird statement about the Metacritic rating thing, by the way, being a minimum of 95. Skyrim is at 96, but Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3 and 4 are all below that. Is he saying that those games were failures too? Seems like a crazy standard to set. I mean, I'm pretty sure less than 1% of top games get 95 or above. You can't please everyone. Not sure why that was mentioned or compared, but essentially, if true, this article shows that Bethesda are feeling the pressure. Weighed down by their own past success, they're anxious about trying to replicate the success of their past entries. I don't have intel on Bethesda's mindset, but when reading these quotes from Nesmith, it looks like he's already resigned to defeat. He's already begun the process of trying to lower expectations by giving out these quotes, almost suggesting that Bethesda days are numbered and their best days are already behind them. In this video, I'm going to discuss why this mentality is wrong, and I'm going to offer them a solution. Yeah, me, a random guy on the internet. I'm sure they'll be absolutely made up. But let's get into it, and if you're watching this video, you might be able to help. Quick side note, thanks for all your support as always. I'm Av Gaming and I do video game analysis, so please consider subscribing. Also, if you enjoy the video, please give it the thumbs up. Let's get straight into the video. So Bethesda are already starting to lower expectations, already conceding defeat that they don't expect the game to reach expectations. After the recent releases, they feel that they can no longer reach the heights that they once did. But why? I think a lot of this has to do with the pain that they suffered from Starfield's reaction. I think they generally thought they were going to get glowing appraisals, and this reaction shook them up. Now, Nesmith is suggesting that it's just because they've already peaked, but I think it's something else. Let's go back in time and cover Bethesda's track record starting at the Elder Scrolls. The game released in 1994 and it sold 3,000 copies. So this wasn't the game that made them. Daggerfall released in 96 and it sold 120,000 copies. The game reviewed well and it indicated that they were on the upward trajectory. Then in 2002, Morrowind arrived. It sold 4 million copies and received stellar reviews. It captured the true open world RPG feeling, and still to this day, it has a strong fanbase. This game catapulted Bethesda up to another level. The game had a great foundation, but it looked a little limited in terms of visuals. It had very little voice acting, things like that. Oblivion released in 2006 and it sold 9.5 million copies. Now, some would argue that it lacked some things from the previous game, but you cannot deny it was more polished. It looked better, it sounded better, its user interface was more friendly, it was designed more for the casual player, whereas Morrowind required dedication. Either way, it scored well and it sold better. Bethesda at this point were a well-known brand. After acquiring the Fallout franchise, Bethesda released Fallout 3 in 2008, and it sold 12.4 million copies. It scored very well as well. Bethesda had shown that they could make great RPGs not just in the Elder Scrolls universe, but also in other worlds like Fallout, which used guns. Again, reviews are high and the sales are higher than the last game. And of course, in 2011, we got Skyrim. This game sold 60 million copies, and it's considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time. It was even more user-friendly than Fallout 3 and Oblivion. Graphics had improved, the game was of a grander scale, and this was when Bethesda reached their peak. And then in 2015, they released Fallout 4, which sold 25 million copies and scored well across the board again. So, what we see is two things. Each game improved on the last. They each improved their graphics, the visuals, open world design, content. They kept adding each time, but the formula was always the same. A Bethesda game. A handcrafted open world game with hundreds of side quests and dungeons to explore. Each game was, at least technologically, a step up from the previous. Now, this is important though. Notice I said handcrafted open world, handcrafted side quests, handcrafted dungeons to explore, each slightly improved more than the last game. Now we can argue that Morrowind had more RPG elements than the previous ones, or Oblivion had better writing, but no matter what, the game stayed consistent and improved overall, at least, as far as the performance goes and graphics. Open world, handcrafted. This was Bethesda. You knew what to expect from a Bethesda game. An offline, open-world RPG where your curiosity would be rewarded. No matter where you went on the map, no matter what dungeon you went inside, it was handcrafted and unique to anything else you'd seen. And then in 2019, we got Fallout 76, and it sold 1.4 million copies. Whoa. So, what about the reviews? Oh. So, up until this point, every game had improved and sold more than the last. Is it these Bethesda fans again, with these too high expectations, being too aggressive? Well, no. Bethesda changed. This game was online. It was an MMORPG. It had a bad launch, but overall, they managed to turn it around. It was not what we expect from a Bethesda game. I've done a video on it if you want more details, but generally speaking, this online game, with repetitive daily quests, events, and microtransactions, is not the same formula. They'd moved away from the formula that had worked in the past and now they'd changed it. It wasn't the same. And then we got Starfield. We all got excited. A giant open space game with Bethesda Formula. It's not online. It sounds awesome. But it wasn't the Bethesda Formula. There was no handcrafted map. It was all procedurally generated. Dungeons were no longer hand-placed, and instead, the game procedurally put them on planets and drew from a bank of previously built dungeons. So, just to reiterate, in every Bethesda game, from Morrowind to Fallout 4, each dungeon was handcrafted and unique. It was never a waste of time to go inside an unexplored location because you were guaranteed to see something different in some way. Starfield broke this rule. On one planet, you would enter Dungeon A, go to the next planet, and you might get Dungeon A as well. And this happened a lot, meaning that there were very limited dungeons designed to cover 1,000 planets. This was not the formula that we knew from Bethesda. Quests were radiant, had no depth, and exploration did not guarantee unique experiences, which meant we lost the desire to explore, as we felt our time may be wasted. I've done a whole video on this and I'll put it in the description, but my main point I'm trying to make is that they did not follow the Bethesda formula. So, quick recap. Bethesda released games with the same formula of open world handcrafted content. Each release, they improve visually and performance-wise. Every game reviews well and sells better than the previous. And then suddenly, Bethesda changed their whole formula, fans don't like it, and now Bethesda say, fans expect too much? My point is, Bethesda, go back to what you do. All you did was improve each game over time but stuck to the same formula. This switch that started with Fallout 76 hasn't worked, and if they decide that Elder Scrolls 6 will be online like 76 or procedurally generated content like Starfield, it's gonna end badly. I'm all for creativity and trying something different, but you have to give your fans what they want as well. Bethesda built one of the biggest fan bases with their formula, and when they turn their back on that method that's worked before, we don't know what these games are anymore. A lot of people like Fallout 3 and 4, but they dislike 76 a lot. It's like a lot of people love Skyrim and Oblivion, but they dislike Starfield. because they identified with Bethesda games and their model, the one that I've just explained. That's the type of game that they love. When you change it completely on them, they don't identify with that game. This is the main reason Bethesda are struggling and their reputation has fallen. You don't have to release your best game ever, but it has to be what the fans expect. So, what do the fans want? If only there was some kind of example that they could use to get ideas from. Wait, what's this? A fan-made mod called Fallout London? What? It's the exact same model that I just explained? It was amazing? And what's this? Skyblivion? But how? Fan-made mod again? But it's just Oblivion, but technologically improved. Will fans even want that? Excuse my sarcasm, but Bethesda need to know this. The fan dedication to the modding of Bethesda games is unreal. Fallout London is bigger than the whole base game of Fallout 4 and its DLC combined. 3,764 cells to cover all of 15 unique boroughs, each with own aesthetics and vibes, 337 interiors to view, over 200 side quests. I've done a whole video on this too if you want to check it out, but it's literally a huge fan-made mod done for free, just for the passion of the game. And it follows the Bethesda model that I was just referring to. Same with Skyblivion. It's the entirety of the Oblivion game, just moved into an upgraded engine and brought up to today's standards. What I'm trying to say is this: if Bethesda need inspiration, ideas, or assistance, they don't need to look very far. It's right there. They are literally already doing the things Bethesda need to be doing. Whilst the fans build these giant game mods, which fans are loving, Bethesda are over there adding furniture to sell on Fallout 76 from microtransactions. How did so much change? How did the fans now become the ones who make the Bethesda games, and Bethesda now are off making something completely different? But my point is this: whilst Bruce Nesmith says he's worried fans won't like it, just bloody ask them. They're right there. Just ask these modders for advice. Ask your fans what they want in Elder Scrolls 6. Take a poll and analyse feedback. After receiving negative feedback on Starfield, Bethesda replied to each fan arguing, saying that the fans were wrong and they weren't enjoying the game properly. What are you doing? The fans are literally leaving constructive criticism that you can learn from. Whilst you argue with the fans and sulk about Starfield's negative reception, they're literally telling you how to fix it. If you want to ensure Elder Scrolls 6 is successful, just look at the fan feedback and suggestions. That's the key, don't just fight them. Now, the last thing I want to touch on. Bethesda make games which are art. Art is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be enjoying the creative process. I'm sure if you asked Todd Howard, he probably had a blast making the games of the past. He loved them. But recently, Bethesda and people like Bruce Nesmith are giving the vibe of unhappiness. This interview honestly sounds like they're dreading it. I don't know what's happened over at Bethesda, but with their growth and success, it seems like they've lost their love for gaming and creating their games. They seem to be speaking in terms of deadlines, tick boxes, or corporate policy. They've grown a lot since the old days, but they need to look inside and find that love for gaming again. If they don't find it, then I suspect it will reflect in the Elder Scrolls 6 when it finally comes out. Rather than feeling the pressure of the fans' expectations, just focus on enjoying the process, just like you did with the previous games that you made when you were successful. Don't worry about meeting expectations, just focus on making the best game possible, something that you'd be proud of. So in summary, my suggestion to Bethesda would be to return to their blueprint of handcrafted open worlds and pick up where they left off before they started veering away. Listen to the fans carefully, taking in constructive feedback, and maybe work with some of these creative modders, as the fans will show you the way to make the perfect Elder Scrolls 6. And finally, try to find the love in game development again. Make it a fun project. I know there's a lot of pressure after Skyrim, but you're Bethesda. You set the standards before. You made Skyrim, for goodness sake. Remember who you are and just focus on making a good game. Nobody really expects it to be as good as Skyrim. At this point, we just want Bethesda to make a Bethesda game again. Anyway, that's it for this one. I mean, what do you guys think? Can Bethesda turn it around? Do you think that I'm in the right or am I way off? And in the off chance that Bethesda are watching this video, then leave a comment on what you want to see in the Elder Scrolls 6. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider giving it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great, and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching, Av out.